Today on this show, we are talking the newest movie, Amsterdam, which is directed by a man named David O. Russell and stars Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, and includes performances from performers such as Chris Rock, Anya Taylor Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers. This is a whole cast of people, who's who, and especially as well publicized, this film is one of Taylor Swift's rare acting performances. So, with all of that said, with all of the discourse that has already been surrounding this movie was pushed as an awards movie and it hasn't gotten the greatest reviews. So, with that all said, let's jump into my review of Amsterdam. Thank you for joining me today on the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman, and welcome to my review of Amsterdam, starting now. So, Amsterdam, this is a movie directed by David O. Russell. Let me just state this right now. I dislike David O. Russell as a filmmaker and as a man. This is a man who has had allegations surrounding him as back as Three Kings on abuse on set, to as most recently as American Hustle, where Amy Adams spoke out against his behavior and Christian Bale, and apparently there was some sort of an altercation in it. If you want more information on this, Vulture does a great article explaining the timelines of allegations against the director. This is just somebody that I do not support in any means necessary. This is a guy that some of the accusations or charges against him are honestly just quite horrifying. There's one specifically with his transgender niece that should be enough to have him never work in Hollywood ever again. I was pretty nervous going into Amsterdam because I didn't want to go in any way supporting this filmmaker or giving him money, essentially. I was able to get a free screening of this movie from a press screening at one of the local Century theaters. I went out of my way to make sure I could go to that so I didn't have to pay for this film. Again, if you're going to see this film, may I suggest buying a ticket for a film like Bros or The Woman King, and then that way you can still see the film without necessarily directly supporting the director. David O. Russell, I just learned about these allegations quite literally when Vulture did this article, which was a few days ago. I didn't know anything about this besides some of the stuff that I heard about George Clooney punching him on set of Three Kings. Besides that, I just didn't like the guy. The movies he were making, they were often quite prestigious. They were often in the award conversations, and I just thought they were bad. I mean, just straight up, I don't think this guy's that talented of a filmmaker. I never like using the word hack, but that was the closest word that I could think of when I was thinking of David O. Russell. I just think so much of it is built on good actors, and then like he himself just has to put himself in there, and the direction and the writing is always the weak parts of said good movies. I thought that about The Fighter. I thought that about Joy. I thought that about Three Kings. I thought that about I Heart Huckabees. I just didn't think this guy really had any form of talent. American Hustle was kind of the grandiose scale of that, where I just saw that movie and I'm like, this guy doesn't understand how to make a good movie. And Amsterdam is kind of much of the same, except for the fact that the performances I like so much that I was able to get over some of my qualms with the direction and writing in this film. This film is about three friends who met during World War I. They go to Amsterdam to basically heal up after some major injuries happen to them. There they just discover this huge friendship that they all have together. They're all dancing, they're all merry, and then the character of Christian Bale decides to move back to New York to be with his wife's family, who all hates him. And then we cut forward to right before World War II, during the Great Depression, 1932. We have John David Washington and Christian Bale are still friends. They are in New York. There is somebody who has just died that is of importance, and then they discover that they are accused of the murders of this person. And then Margot Robbie's character steps back in. That's a pretty broad explanation of the movie. I don't want to go into any more detail just because this film does rely on twists and turns. Amsterdam, by all accounts, is a murder mystery film. And like I said, I liked aspects of this movie a lot. Let me just say the biggest performer in this movie who I thought was incredible was Christian Bale. he's outstanding in this movie. David O. Russell uses him to just expertise in this film. He is so funny. This is such a broad comedic performance from him, where he is such a physical performer in this movie. He has to do a lot of pratfalls. He has to do just a lot of just physical comedy that can be really wearing, and if done wrong, just feel like just absolutely dumb. He pulls it all off in really expert ways. I thought this character was by far the most interesting and the most fun and fit the tone of the movie, which is kind of this pseudo comedy mystery thriller film. I think he does it so well throughout every scene. I'd love to see Christian Bale explore this genre of filmmaking. Everyone else in the movie is varying degrees of good to not really used properly. Robert De Niro in this film I thought was actually quite impressive. Robert De Niro I think gives a really dignified performance, and he really makes the third act of the film work wonders. Margot Robbie and John David Washington are true lovers in this film. They have a great chemistry from beginning to end. The way these two actors are used in this film can very much feel like a plot device and David O. Russell trying to say something impactful that really just doesn't have as much meat on the bone as he thinks it does. But again, they give good performances through this. Now, there are some other actors in this film who I just think completely are miscast in this film. Rami Malek and Anya Taylor Joy are true actors that I like, especially in the case of Anya Taylor Joy, who I think is just an absolutely fantastic actress. She doesn't get really anything to do in this film, and then when they use her, you just think that this character doesn't quite fit the role that Anya Taylor Joy is bringing into it. It just doesn't fit her personality well. What they have this character do, it just doesn't really make sense. They needed somebody else in this role, and that's especially in the case of Rami Malek, where I just thought he was completely miscast in this film. So, like I said, the performances are varying degrees of great to just underutilized or misused. There's some great side performances that come in, like Mike Myers, who's able to deliver a few comedic beats with Michael Shannon, and those scenes really work. This film is needlessly convoluted. From beginning to end. It's supposed to be this idea of you taking one string and unraveling it and finding out this deep conspiracy that you didn't really know how far it goes. The issue is it's so needlessly convoluted. The story is quite obvious from, I'd say, the 30-minute mark, who the villains are, where it's going, and why it's going. There's enough hints that are dropped throughout where it's just like, this film, I think, thinks it's smarter, that the reveals are much more impactful, and it's really like your audience already understands where this film is going. Thus, the convolution, all it does is to add to a long runtime, which is 2 hours and 15 minutes. This film really could have benefited from being about 20 minutes shorter. There are some flares to this film that I like. I actually think the directorial style in this film suits it. It has a nice 1930s throwback. It has an anachronistic feel to it where it just breaks the time periods, especially with Chris Rock, who just sounds like he's delivering dialogue in 2022. It just sounds like he's essentially just doing his stand-up routine. But that all worked for me. The anachronistic tendencies in this film worked for me, especially in the case of the jargon of Chris Rock. As David O. Russell is clearly trying to make a relevant statement in 2022 about our current landscape while telling a story in the 1930s. It's quite obvious to guess where the messaging is going. It also makes all the plot devices, all of that, really obvious where it is going throughout the film. You just know once you realize, oh, this is talking about this in our modern society, this is going to be the ending of the film. Like I said, there's just too many sleight of hands in this movie, or just sleight of hands that end up failing, where he's like, oh, I'm going to trick you. And it's like, I saw you move the card from that hand to that hand. Like, what are you doing? There's too many stuff like that. But as a visual film, this film looks quite good often. The cinematography is great. The music choices are really good. There's a lot to like about this film, especially the performances. I was never particularly bored watching this film, though it did feel overlong. For all the people who are watching this film because of Taylor Swift, let me just say it right now. She's in the movie for like 1 to 2 minutes. I actually think she gives a credible performance in those 1 to 2 minutes, but it never, those who are like, oh, this is going to be Taylor Swift showcasing her skills as an actress. It's not really that. She's not in the film enough to do that. But for what she is in the film, I think she's good. I ended up liking Amsterdam enough. I thought it was a fun enough romper. It was pushed as an award season film, and it's just quite not that. It's not good enough to be that. But as a kind of just fits in this genre of whimsical and Agatha Christie, a Knives Out, Murder on the Orient Express, any of those types of movies, it works enough. I can recommend this movie if you're a fan of those types of movies, and the comedy in this film works quite well, largely due to the comedic performances of Christian Bale, who I think is incredible in this film. I am giving Amsterdam 3 out of 4 stars. That's my review of Amsterdam. Like I said, this is a film that I totally understand why people are going to have a hard time supporting this film. I totally understand why people are not going to see this film or pay to support this director. I will say right now, it is really hard and complicated knowing that some actors that I just quite love and respect and the work that they've been championing for the past few years ended up signing on for a movie like that. That is a really rough thing to wrestle with and understand, where it's just like, well, you've been supporting this, but now you're working with a director who is accused slash done this. That is something that is really complicated, and it's the complicated legacy of a film like Amsterdam. Thank you for watching my review of Amsterdam. If you like this review, make sure to like and subscribe here to the Beniverse. My name is Ben Friedman. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.